Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Are you still doing annual staff performance reviews? Well, a lot of companies have dropped the once-a-year assessment and replaced it with more regular, ongoing check-ins. That's just one of the current HR trends Karen Gately of Corporate Dojo has observed. Others are to do with artificial intelligence, hybrid workspaces, and diversity, equity and inclusion programs. Leadership is another. And she explains to Chris Ashmore there's an ongoing shift in the way that leaders are thinking.
The reality is our millennials, so, our Gen Ys, our Gen Zs are actually stepping into leadership roles. And with that is coming quite a substantial shift in their priorities and the way they think about their workforce and the way they think about just the world of work and the way work should be done. So I think that's especially important for, more mature, if we can put it that way, leaders who are perhaps older in their careers. Understanding those leaders that are coming after them, I think, is going to be a really important priority. So, for example, they're entirely more likely to be thinking about people's health, their well-being, thinking about balance, thinking about consultation, thinking about empathy in the workplace. So, employee health, well-being and rights, I think, is something that's firmly on this generation's radar.
And it's a good thing to think about these things.
Absolutely. And I need to be clear in saying it's not just that generation that think that way. Clearly, there's plenty of older leaders that do also. But I do see a lot of that happening around leadership tables now, where there's a stronger debate around what is the right thing to do and what are the rights of employees. So a classic one is around remote working and whether or not people need to come on site or not. Again, I observe a pretty strong generational difference in how those groups are thinking.
What about technology, Karen? Is that having an impact, and if so, how?
Well, I think technology is just changing at pace all the time. So when I look across the organisations that I work with, I would say the overwhelming majority have technology on their radar for 2024. And a big part of that is enabling different ways of working, so different types of technology that are helping teams to collaborate, stay connected, and obviously do their work. But I think the very big one that I'm observing is AI. And just how quickly, I would argue that that's been probably even in the last 6 months, where all of a sudden more and more workplaces are looking at AI and its potential. How can we take work out of the day-to-day operations? How can we streamline, simplify? Even something, like ChatGPT, I think is having a massive impact in workplaces. So I think a lot of employers are having to get their heads around what are our policies around this? How are we comfortable or not comfortable with AI being leveraged?
Are you seeing some companies then looking at how employees can embrace or perhaps have experience using AI?
Yeah, I think there's more and more emphasis around education at all levels of the organisation around how does it work, where are the opportunities to leverage it, and then what's the rule book around how we do. So I think we're going to see a lot more training in this space, so if we wind back the clock 15, 20 years ago, everybody was doing their Microsoft Office training, PowerPoint, Excel, Word, etc. And while that's still relevant, obviously, I think there's going to be a lot more emphasis on advanced technologies and helping us to understand how to use them and how to use them well.
There's always a next step for your business. There's always help at every stage. As you grow your business, we're here to support you every step of the way. Move forward with Mazars. Visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.
You touched upon it before, but workplaces and workspaces, how are they changing for employees?
Well, obviously, there's the whole redefining of what a work environment actually is. So clearly a lot of people are still working remotely, getting clearer definition around what are our expectations. If people aren't physically in our office space, then where do we expect them to be? What's the kind of setup that we need them to have? What are the occupational health and safety obligations that employers need to be mindful of and then put policy around in terms of how people are working? So that broad definition of what is a workspace. And then the other one I'm seeing is a strong focus on creating spaces that inspire people to want to come in. So a lot of organisations are reconfiguring the space that they've got or downsizing the space or changing the space so that when people are there, there's a lot more flexibility. So a lot more hot desking post-COVID. People are less likely to have a fixed desk that they go to every day, but also a lot more spaces for groups to come together, to think together, plan, collaborate, but also just connect and socialise.
Anything else you see trending in HR this year?
Well, I think the ongoing trend is around employee wellbeing and mental health support. I think it is good news that there's growing awareness that our mental health has a profound impact on our capacity to be at our best in the workplace. Obviously, that extends to the need to create organisational environments that are healthy. So obviously we've seen strengthening of laws in Victoria, for example, around psychological safety in the workplace. So I think, again, a lot of employers are getting their minds around what does that actually mean for us? What are those psychological hazards in our workplace and what steps are we taking to actually mitigate those risks and make sure that our people are well? So I think that's going to continue to be a really strong focus. I think also, not new, but continuing is the space of diversity and inclusion and understanding the different requirements of an employer, but also, again, the environments that we create so that diverse groups of people are welcome, are engaged, and obviously are treated with respect and decency and able to be safe in their workplace. So I think, again, a lot of education is going to be happening in that space and employers really having to get their minds around what does that mean for them and how they operate as a business. And then I think the other one that's firmly on my radar is just observing a shift around performance management. So, there's been some pretty traditional ways of managing performance in the past. What I'm observing is that's becoming far more agile. So the annual review is starting to become a bit of a thing of the past for many businesses, shifting to more regular check-ins, shorter time frame, goal setting. So, a more dynamic approach. So whether that's, every month we're talking about performance or every quarter at least we're talking about performance as opposed to those annual cycles that have been the tradition.
That was Karen Gately, CEO of Corporate Dojo. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.